Hell found me again. All the fire, brimstone, pain, and hurt comes flooding back as soon as that bony hand clamps itself on my wrist. Then I was back in the holding cave, waiting for my turn to be tortured and humiliated. It wasn't the first time. I wasn't surprised. This was my hell. Getting out wasn't hard, but for eternity, I was to be hunted in a world I could never again be a part of. I could hide my rotten appearance for a while. Tight gloves over bony, fleshless hands, glasses over dead white eyes, loose, baggy clothes, but it wouldn't last. Eventually, someone would see. Then the chase would be on. Every time they came for me, it was different. Sometimes they looked like me, caricatures of humanity, delicately blending in with the people who cared too little to even notice. Other times they would appear as horrors even my imaginative mind couldn't comprehend. They love the chase, letting me think I'm getting away, giving me a false sense of hope. Foolishly, I hold on to it like a life raft. I cling to that small feeling like a man drowning at sea, reaching for anything to keep afloat, no matter how flimsy. I grasp at the thin straws until the very last moment. That moment I always knew waited at the end of our little game. The end of the line. Then I would be struck down and sent back to hell, where I was sentenced to burn with the rest of the suffering souls. This time will be different. I know all of their tricks. Quietly, I slip out of the dark, damp holding cave where they threw me. I step over the bloated and decaying bodies of the tortured, and I run as fast as I can through the demon's playground. The cries and screams of the less fortunate follow loudly behind me as I try to push them out of my mind. I climb up the wall of the broken bodies that crumble under the horrendous punishment. I try not to gag as the wounds and gashes they suffer tried to mend under my weight, knowing only more pain and suffering awaits them when they can stand it. Near the top of the pile, I find the small fissure in the heated rock wall. I walk through the smoldering crevice for what seems like hours. No one's pursuing me. No alarm sounded. I'm out again, free from the fiery hell that tried to claim me. The wall's heat seems to intensify as it narrows to a point. I have to thrust roughly through as the rock's sharp contours burn and rip chunks of skin from my decaying body. I push the pain away. Small cuts and burns are nothing compared to the horrors bestowed upon me in hell's playgrounds. The heat fades away as the fissure closes in around me. I give one last push. The loud, dry snapping of bone and muscle doesn't even slow me down as my body squeezes forcefully through the small slit, and I'm birthed out the other side. The hidden tunnel expels me into a small, cramped bathroom stall. I stand up slowly. I'm careful to snap the dislocated bones back into place, patching my dying body up just enough to walk or run if I need to. The bathroom is dark and dirty. The door is broken off of its hinges and laid limply against the doorframe, like a scab waiting to be ripped off with the slightest touch. The blue color was faded and tattooed with graffiti. Behind it, I can see a broken mirror, and the white tile on the floor is cracked and stained gray. I hold my breath and wait for the sound of gasps and shrieks, but they don't come. I'm alone. No one was in the bathroom when I came through, and I wasn't followed. I make my way to the door and listen. Low murmuring and whispers drift into the bathroom from wherever the other side of the door leads. I can't wait any longer. I make up my mind and I push open the door and step out. I can't believe my luck. I'm right where I wanted to be. The door leads out into a slow, barely occupied subway station. It must be late at night, or even early in the morning. Only a handful of commuters are mulling around. A few look in my direction, but mostly they're too busy or tired to care about someone walking around looking lost, no matter how sick he looks. Without pausing, I walk up to the loading platform, not caring where the train goes, as long as I can get far away from that opening that brought me here. I have a chance to become lost in the crowd. I hear the train coming down the tunnel, and my hopes begin to soar. I could finally do this. I could finally be back in the world I was taken from so long ago. I look around expecting to see someone running after me, expecting to be chased, but no one's there. The weary-eyed travelers start to line up behind me, waiting for the train that will take them to work or school, anywhere but here. The train's large, bright light appears down the dark tunnel, and I have to restrain myself from running down the tracks to meet it. Someone behind me tried to push forward and shove me closer to the edge. I turn back to say something, but the words get caught in my throat. From the corner of my eye, I see the door to the dingy bathroom swing forward, and a man is standing there, looking out toward the subway loading platform. His black suit gives him an imposing look as he stands in front of the white-painted wall, and his eyes are glowing red. The man in front of me was talking, but the words were lost in the rushing wind of the oncoming train. A glimmer of red flashes just to the right of me, and my head whips in that direction almost involuntarily. One of the late-night commuters drops his briefcase and points at me. I see his eyes go red, and horns push through his straight blonde hair. The woman next to him also stops walking toward the train and begins to point, a devilish grin spreading slowly on her face. I could see the large fangs poking out from her small thin lips now. Laughter breaks through the now noisy subway station. It comes from the man in front of me. I could see him, but now he was more than just a man. It's like a demon was wearing a translucent husk of a man. I can still see the man's face and features, but if I stare too long, they seem to be replaced by the black, rough, scaly skin of a demon. His eyes were blood red, and the inside of his mouth looks like it's full of crushed glass. I realize I was wrong. My hell wasn't to be chased in the world I used to be a part of. How stupid was I to believe I could ever escape hell? My punishment is to constantly be hunted. Not in the vivid world I used to know, but deep in the bowels of hell. A place that they can twist and contort to whatever I wanted most, just so they could rip it out from under me and crush my hopes over and over again in an endless cycle of torture and heartbreak. I wasn't surprised as the demon in front of me shoved me in the chest. My feet left the ground and I flew backwards toward the tracks. Everything ran in slow motion. Dozens of red eyes watched me with eager anticipation, wanting to see my death over and over again, like they've been doing for years. This was their game. I was just a piece to be used, not even a player, just a pawn. I close my eyes as I land roughly on the hard, unforgiving train tracks, and the laughter is blending into the whirling sound of the oncoming train. I don't try to get up. I don't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me struggle. I try not to look, but as the train gets closer, my body forces my eyes open. Seeing the silver train barreling down like a bullet out of a giant gun isn't the worst part. What gets me are all those red eyes peering hungrily down at the tracks. I try not to scream, but I do. Hell found me. All the fire, brimstone, and pain and hurt come flooding back as soon as that bony hand clamped itself on my wrist and threw me into the holding cave. This time will be different. I know all their tricks. Fog shrouded the island. Thick white haze, like a large wet blanket, was pulled over the entire chunk of land. He was not afraid. He knew he would eventually be back. Life had to go on, even if he did not. To him it seemed like years since he was on the island. But it didn't matter. Time would not move without him. It waited for him to come back. Days, weeks, months. Time would hold for as long as it had to, like a worried father waiting up impatiently at the table for his little girl to come home from her first date. When he stepped back on the island, time would be there to greet him. He lingered on the shore, not sure how he arrived here, but not too shocked that he did. Just moments ago, he was 12 years old, getting his first kiss from a small older blonde girl named Melinda behind his middle school's gym. They cut their fourth period class together and holed up in the cafeteria, not caring about what they missed. Then the cafeteria was gone, and he was at his high school graduation party at Disneyland. The girl of his dreams was holding his hand and pulling him towards the line for the doomsday drop. The fear came flooding back as he looked up and saw the current riders plunging quickly towards the ground. He didn't want to ride, but wasn't willing to let go of her hand. Time seemed to fly by. He bounced from moment to moment. Times and places started to blur together faster than he could register them. He was there when he met his wife for the first time. She was watching a softball game he was playing in for a co-ed work league. He twisted his ankle and she brought him over some ice. He saw the look in her eyes as he struggled to find something to say that would make him seem interesting and nice. Instead, his mind drew a blank, and he stuttered and sounded like an idiot. But she smiled anyway, and he did not care. Now he was here again, standing on the shore, knowing he was supposed to follow the dirt path that cut its way through the tropical trees and made its way deeper into the heart of the island. He stayed back and watched his small boat come closer to the sandy shore from the much larger research vessel anchored in the sea close by. He saw himself, eyes wide with possibility, a smile of hope, and the sense that just around the corner could lay the discovery of a lifetime. He watched as he climbed out of the boat and took in the lush foliage of the thick jungle trees. He closed his eyes and breathed in the air. He remembered that smell, a refreshing mixture of sea salt and fresh sand. He knew he couldn't wait any longer. He saw himself head down the dirt path, lugging his huge equipment pack behind him, and calling to his assistant to keep up. Still standing on the shore alone, he watched them fade off into the jungle. He took one last long look at the beautiful ocean, wanting to take in as much of it as he could. Miles and miles of water cut abruptly short by a thick veil of fog. As he looked on, the fog seemed to solidify, trapping him on the island like a cage. There was no more going back for him. He could only follow them down the path into the jungle, where time waited for him. He remembered how the first time the walk through the jungle seemed to take hours. but once he started on the path, he was already at the top of the cliffs. He watched as high above his head, he was hugging the rocky cliff's face as he tried to skirt the lip of the rock wall, trying to go higher and further than anyone else before him, putting in the effort he knew a new discovery would cost. He knew his right foot would slip for a second, and he would teeter on the edge before he would pull himself roughly against the unforgiving surface. He reached up unconsciously, trying to feel for the gash that would open up on his head when it hits the rocky cliff wall. After that, he did not have to see any more. He knew what was going to happen. He watched as he pushed on, ignoring the pain and wiping the blood off his face with his hand. He was so determined. He watched until he could no longer see himself climbing the slick rock wall. It didn't matter anymore. He knew where he would end up. All alone on the cliff, he slowly walked out towards the edge, trying to be careful. He peered directly over the lip. He was not shocked to see his mangled body broken and crushed against the sharp rocks beneath him. Time caught up to him. There was nothing he could do. He let go and joined back with his body, back where he was supposed to be. The pain never came, just a dull numbness where it should have been. He knew he was dying. The blood on his hand made the rocks too slippery, and he couldn't hold on. He should have gone back, but he was too far up, too close to the top. A million thoughts rushed through his head as he fell. Memories and dates he held dear. People and places he hoped to remember. It seemed to last forever. But time would not wait for him any longer. He did not try to move. His eyes were closed, but with the last ounce of strength he had, he pried them open. The sky above him was more beautiful than he had ever seen it. The crystal blues were like an endless ocean waiting for him on a hot day. The sun grew larger and brighter as he waited for what came next. It grew and grew until it was all he saw. Just one large white light in front of him, waiting for him. His eyes were too heavy to keep open, but the light did not go away. At last, he could not hold on any longer. His eyes shut for the last time, and he slipped away. He twisted his ankle. A beautiful young girl with brown hair and amazingly soft brown eyes stood up and walked over to him holding a bag of ice. He knew he would not know what to say, but he had to try. He couldn't take his eyes off of her. He hoped this time would never end.